Superman is one of the most iconic characters in all of comics, as he is viewed as the ideal of what a superhero should stand for. He has the powers of a god, but still chooses to always stand for truth, justice, and the American way. Personally, I find his attitude three-dimensional and rather unrealistic. I want to show you how Marvel Comics took the idea of Superman and made the concept 1,000 times more interesting, all by simply making his mind and emotions more imperfectly human. There have been several separate versions of Hyperion in Marvel Comics over the decades, but we're going to be looking at the version from the Supreme Power universe. We will start like most Superman stories do, with a rocket crashing down from space to a small American farm. It is instantly approached by a married couple who live nearby. Upon closer inspection of the craft, the wife sees a baby inside, completely unharmed. She convinces her husband to let them raise it as their own, very similar to what the Kents did when they found baby Superman. However, this is where the story diverges from the typical story you know, as they all hear a knock at the door. The family is greeted with guns to their heads. The United States of America has strong interest in the future of this child, and they intend to play a direct role in his life. He would be a child of the government, a weapon for them to use. Hyperion, or Marcus Milton as he was named, was raised by special agents and tutors of the government. This was done with the goal of making him unquestionably loyal to American interest, which seemed to be working. Once Mark was a young man, he was brought into the White House to meet the president. The president told him America needs his help in the Middle East fighting terrorism, and Mark agreed without hesitation because of the manipulation he went through while growing up. That night, Mark did exactly what he was asked, with a speed and ease that shocked all who witnessed. After this, the government had no choice but to go public with Hyperion, so Mark flies to a big journalist for an interview. At this point in his life, Hyperion is still remarkably similar to the classic Superman. He has a strong desire to use his powers to help others and to be accepted by the world. He spends the following year building public trust, doing the typical superhero saves. Around this time, another superpowered individual comes public. His name is Stanley Stewart, and he can run at Mach speeds. Mark gets the opportunity to talk to him, and it's the first time we see him open up to someone. He had always assumed he was the only one of his kind, but the fact that he isn't alone is comforting to him. He had always felt a slight disconnection from humanity, and now he doesn't feel so alone in the world. This is one of the major differences between Hyperion and Superman. Clark Kent sees himself as a regular, down-to-earth person, while Mark Milton can't help but see that he is obviously separate and above the rest of humanity. This makes him sound like a villain, but ironically, it makes his character more humanly flawed, whereas Superman is typically portrayed as having the most unrealistically perfect morals. Picking back up with the story, Hyperion notices a whole new superpowered being while on an unsanctioned mission. He pursued the individual, closing in fast, but as soon as he closed in, Mark was knocked to the ground with explosive force. This is his introduction to Dr. Spectrum, a military agent powered by an extraterrestrial stone. Hyperion only wants to talk, but Spectrum unleashes a wave of destruction towards him. This is where things take a turn. Hyperion has never in his life experienced pain until this point. Instead of being mad, he asks Spectrum to do it again, which leaves Spectrum confused. Mark then lashes out at him, which would have been truly terrifying to witness. You can't help but feel bad for Mark as you watch him lash out. Maybe if that farm couple raised him with love, things could have been different. Instead, he's here in the desert, battling Dr. Spectrum, and for the first time ever, he is getting lost in the violence. Once Hyperion makes physical contact with the stone, his head is flooded with visions of his origin. This shows him that his whole life was a lie, and he has been manipulated by everyone around him from the beginning. Just like anyone else when they are betrayed by those around them, Mark feels hurt and confused. He decides that he needs to talk to the people involved with this, and there's really no stopping Hyperion from doing anything. The first place he goes is the military base, where his government handler is. He walks through everything they throw at him, as if nobody was there at all. Mark then finds his spaceship hidden away using his X-ray vision, confirming that he truly is different from the rest of humanity. The handler arms a mega nuke and awaits Hyperion's arrival. It's important to note that he didn't harm any soldiers while making his way through the base. He's not evil, but he does intend on getting answers. The handler confirmed every fear Hyperion had. His whole life he was groomed and manipulated by everyone in his life, all as a tool for the government to control him. They don't see him as human, they see him as a weapon to be used and, if need be, disposed of. He presses the detonator he's been holding, and the entire facility goes up in flames with the hopes of killing Hyperion. This failed, obviously, but it did make him lose all his faith in the government and even the world system as a whole. Hyperion can later be seen in the city, back to saving lives like a superhero does. Only now things have changed, the public is generally terrified of him. The reasoning is that government organizations have been running smear campaigns against Hyperion, generating paranoia from his alien origin. This was the worst strategy imaginable, as this seemed to give Mark very little to ground him to humanity. As a man who has been pushed too far, he sent a letter to the generals in command that he is going to hit the North Pole as a show of what he can do, with that being his last form of communication with them. His impact was visible from space and measured as the strongest seismic event in human history. The message was clear. Mark Milton was fed up with what the world had to offer, and he rejected it all. This story doesn't have a happy ending. In fact, most Hyperion stories don't, but that's just what makes him so interesting.